Hello, welcome to Freelancers Coffee Break podcast. I'm your host, Ali, and with my co host, Mehmet, we try to get into the nits of freelancing and,
Anything to do with freelancing.
yeah, deliver whatever value we can to help you grow your freelancer.
Also, it's a group therapy for us. We just talk about what we face and it becomes a kind of a group therapy.
Yeah, you get to talk about your problems and how, you know, usually, whatever you experience in life, it just reflects to your work. But that's like another podcast, I guess, because that's, you know, yeah. So today we're going to talk about increasing rates, how
Yeah.
you can increase your rates and what stages you should increase your rates and so on and so forth.
Ali, you never worked in corporate life. Maybe you worked in some place that you went to your boss and asked for a raise. Did you ever do that?
First real job I got
Yeah. Yeah.
was I was hired as the representative of the music department in the stores called DNRs in Turkey.
Oh, okay.
That was like when I decided to go back to university, finish it up, blah blah, and I was trying to find a job, blah blah. And yeah, I just talked to the manager and it was part-time, so I said, "Hey, can you I said, um can we schedule this in a way that I don't miss my lessons?"
Mm.
And so he's like, "Okay, for sure." And then the next day I go and I find out that he didn't. And he's like, "It is what it is." Yeah. So, anyways, my 3 days there,
Okay.
so I worked there for 3 days. Yeah. So I said, I quit then. He's like, "Go ahead," because he thought that I wouldn't. Because the
Mm.
people who work there, like, that's one thing I didn't want to pursue. Like, it wasn't something to pursue to begin with for me. It was just a way of making money. But there are people there who are working there and they're making a living. They have
Mm.
children and they're glad they have
Yeah,
this
they
job.
know
So
that they are usually the people there are desperate,
yeah,
in
yeah,
short.
they're
Yeah.
fucking. They're glad that they have this job, but I don't give a fuck. Like, So, and he thought I was bluffing. And yeah, I just wrote this. I said, "What do I have to do?" And he said, "You have to write like this, whatever you call it." And
Resignation letter.
yeah, a pen and a paper. He does, and yeah, I just quit there. And then he came back when I was like packing my things. He's like, "Hey, come here. Let's just work this out." And I was like, "Nah, man. I'm good." And I left. So that was my, kind of corporate job. Not corporate, really, but yeah, job. I
So
would
you
call it.
never knocked the door and asked, you I've been working here for a long time and now
Well, it's
the
the same.
financial situations and so on,
It's the
and then
same
ask for a raise. Yeah,
when you
I
ask
would
your
come to that.
clients. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the same kind of.
that's what I was coming to.
At least sometimes,
Yeah.
not always, but sometimes you're like, "Hey, man, you know, my rates are changing, and I don't want to lose you too. So let's just make this work. You can do it."
So let's start with this. When do you decide that you have to raise your rates?
So there are periods where I, get contracts, and my rate at that stage is something that I raised on my profile
Hmm.
because I gradually raise my rates. So yeah, that job comes, and at that stage, actually, like, it used to be like this. I would rate raise based on the jobs uh, I got, and but now since I'm like working fixed price, um, so I raise my fixed prices. So therefore, it's all actually related. Yeah,
Far more easier, I guess, when you raise your fixed price because
yeah,
the
of course,
client
yeah.
usually doesn't understand. They just look at the point of, okay, what's the value of this project to me? And okay, shall I pay it? For example, if it is the value of the project is 10 times or more than what he's paying to, he'll easily say, okay, let's do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Since, if they have the resources, they will gladly. But yeah, some clients, they try to stop the push. So they're like, how long is this going to go on? But I think this is like a very shallow approach because, um, yeah, man, like you're making money. So, I'm making money. You're making more money now. So maybe I should make more money too. It's only fair. Yeah. So yeah, that's at least how I will approach when I'm working with people.
When you start first to Upwork or any other platforms, also, of course, when you are the first, you have to start with a very low rate. In fact, much
Yeah.
lower than you would normally do. But that's the only way because you don't have a reference and people are taking a risk when they are hiring someone with no reference. They don't know. So you have to compensate them with like kind of this is, if this plays well, I make so much money for this amount of work. So you make them do it. So after a couple of work, probably you'll even double your rates.
Yep.
This
Exactly.
is what I did, and I guess you did as well.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. That's the way to do it. Because when there is like demand, you have to raise your rates.
Every 6 months, I was raising my rates when I first started. I guess this continued for 2 years. Every 6 months, I was raising my rates. Of course, as you raise, some clients drop you off. They say, "Oh, you became too expensive." But if you can find new ones that are happy to pay the or ready to pay what you are asking, then good. You just continue. And after you reach a point, then every 6 months raise for me, it became cumbersome. The you go to an good client and asking new rates every 6 months is not convenient. But then I decided, okay, I'll do it once in a year. It will be December or just 1st of December, around those times, because they are getting in a good mood. Why? Because most of my clients are in Europe and North America. They are in Christmas mood.
Okay.
Work is less. They are thinking about they are going on holiday soon, or after usually 15th of December. They don't have anything for me usually at that time. But I just let them know, okay, I'll be raising my rates by 1st of January to this. And they usually didn't say anything. And when in the beginning, he had told us and so on. Of course, there are still some clients who may drop you, but if there's this analogy, usually, you put a frog in a pot with cold water and you warm it up little by little, it doesn't
Yeah.
realize that it's being cooked. So I at first I was raising by 10%. Then I because my
Fuck, man. Where did you hear that quote? That's cool. I like that. Can you repeat it?
you put a frog in a cold water and you start warming up the water, and because it incrementally increases, the water starts boiling. The frog doesn't realize it's being cooked.
It's being cooked. Yeah. Wow.
So
That's great. Yeah.
after 10%, after you reach a certain point, I started raising by 5%, because when you raise that much, and then 10% starts looking too much. But 5%, again, like 10% of $50 becomes 55. Then you again make it 10% more, 5.5 increase, it becomes
There's also the
6 point.
fact that, like, right now, for example, Upwork has this new function where, they say, hey,
Yeah, yeah,
are you going to ask for a raise? Uh,
that's a very good function. In fact,
yeah.
it just
I'm
gets
always down. Like, I'm like right there, 15%. I just dropped that baby right there because there's a lot of indicators. You don't know what's going to happen. Even
exactly, exactly.
even with US dollars. So, they how much inflation they had, like almost 10% or something
Hmm.
like that. So that's like United States.
I think putting their annual, if you are if your rates are high, you can easily say 10% automatic raise every 12 months. is good one. If your rates are not that high, then you can just say 10% every 6 months or 5% every 6 months, because when you make 6 month increases, cumulative increase would be much higher. Annual increase 5%, then another 5% on top of that, so it will be
Yeah.
cumulative.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the tough point is asking raise to your good clients, or as raising your fixed rates.
After you build this relationship, I don't think it's tough because you have to like work that relationship, baby. Like that's the key. That's key for everything because yeah, it's a lot of things. A relationship building, like there's the work you're delivering, the quality of service, availability, and so forth. So it's really important, I think. Uh,
Yeah, they should not fear of, just as you said, your work should be very high quality, delivering on time, and everything should be perfect. So when you raise the rates, the client should think of, oh, I can't get into the trouble of trying to
I
find
always,
someone else.
I always give my sister as a good example. Look, she showed me Elance. It was Elance before Upwork, and that was
Mm-hmm,
like I was in high school. So we're talking 2003, 2004.
mm-hmm.
That's like a long time ago. I didn't become a member back then, but
If you had, you would be a star, you would be, half
yeah,
million earner
yeah.
probably
But
by
she
now.
was,
Ah,
she was studying art and
mm-hmm,
animation, computer animation. So she was like, making some dollars back then, but she just didn't pursue it, right? And
mm-hmm,
now, like, she saw me what I did on Upwork, so she's like, "Hey, I want to give this a shot." And she came back,
mm,
and yeah, right now she's like, kind of behind in terms of the technology she uses and stuff.
mm,
So she kind of is struggling
mm,
because like everything has changed, you
yeah,
know. And what she does is, so she got this client, and she charged them like she worked hourly, but she charged them in total like $2,000. Okay, so basically what she said is, hey, like I fucking forgot, but I still ran the timer. Like I don't care. They hired me, so. But for me, like if I would never do that, because that's not the client's responsibility. So, that's I think where you build that
I didn't
relationship.
get it. What did she do exactly? I
So
didn't get it.
she just didn't know what the fuck to do. She
Ah,
just learned while doing it. Like what she remembers, she combined with
ah,
some like learning,
mm-hmm.
and she built them all of that, like all the learning, all
Ah,
that shit. Yeah, she just ran the hourly the timer. So yeah, like the client will probably pay you, but you'll feel too expensive in
yeah.
the future, for example, or maybe not. I don't know.
They may even go to dispute for that.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. She's like, I don't care. They paid me and I'm good. But yeah, that's not how you build a relationship with your client.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a good example actually.
That's why I also like fixed rate, because you tell them, okay, you when you see after you do certain level of work, you also know that you know how long a half an hour podcast will take, 1 hour podcast will take approximately.
Yep.
For me as well, I see the assets and see, okay, this advertisement visual will take this much of time, and you calculate it, and it should be around this. And I also put add a buffer amount, so that
It's odd
if
because sometimes you start with very low rates.
mhm,
Like you at some point were charging, like I was charging $30 and I was really happy for
mhm,
like a whole episode. That was like a huge thing for me. But man, like the same guy is paying me $100 right now. Or
mhm.
like the same guy was paying $7.50 back then and now paying $45 an hour.
but if you had asked them at that time $100,
No.
they wouldn't go with you. It's
But why
again,
did
as you
they?
said,
If they
it's
could pay
building
$45,
relationship.
why did they go with you? So they don't know. When you're $45, they don't know for sure. And it's some dirty work too,
Mhm.
So I think they just want to, see how it goes.
Also, there's this fact, usually when the clients also start using your work, for example podcast, they don't know if that podcast will be successful or if it'll have subscribers or my advertisement will get back to them,
It's
will
I
make
don't
money.
look. This is the
Yeah,
point. I don't care
yeah,
because
we don't care,
yeah,
but
no, no,
also
no.
in
As
time they
a
see
look,
that it's valuable,
as a client as well.
hmm
I also hire people, so I don't care if you're making money from your podcast. Like
hmm
you have to, at the end of the day, you have to like invest. So you will have your spendings, and of course there'll be a budget for it. Like you can't expect to make money without putting any money in it. So, and the only way to do that, if you're like broke, you just work, with lower rates, and then you raise your rates like I did. Uh,
hmm
but other than that, like it's like if you're launching a podcast, that's a show.
hmm
So you'll have your expenses, you'll have your whatever. So yeah, and if you want it done by a professional, of course you'll have to pay. So when they say, hey, I'm not making money from this, like you're not gonna fucking make money for 3 years from a podcast. Like I don't care. So
hmm
when they say that, since I'm on top
No,
of
no,
it,
it's not an
so
excuse, but from their side, they don't. I'm saying they usually have limited budget when you first start something. You when you have nothing, you usually come up with a because you don't want to spend that much, unless you already have a very good, funds from another work or something else. You have a lot of money, you say, okay, I'll fund this project and make it big. Or you don't have much, then you start small, and then as you grow, you find the best freelancers to grow your podcast, your business, and so on. That's what I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
I guess so that's what they're doing. Actually, maybe they don't have all the resources, so they're starting with lower rate freelancers. That's why I always advocate for
Mhm,
starters, like to start with lower rates so that you can raise your rates, you can get jobs and raise your rates. It's a process.
mhm.
And yeah, it's been key for me. Some people disagree, but uh yeah, it changed my life, working for $3 an hour.
Yeah, you started with $3 an hour.
Yeah, in
So what's the current rate?
2014.
Around.
Yeah, it's on my profile is 50,
hmm
but when you put it down into the time I spend, it's like 100 right now. But yeah,
Mine
it's
is 80 at the moment. I started with 20, I guess, $20. Now it's 80. But I apply the same rate to everyone. This year I made an exercise, wanted to see if I applied three jobs from $50 just to see if it would be increase my acceptance rate. Out of three, one immediately accepted. So it looks like if I decrease my rates, I'll find more jobs.
of
But
course,
I
yeah.
decided to stick with 80. Just it was an
Okay.
experiment on my side.
Yeah, okay.
And this year I won't increase because I'm now seeing that
So
I
this is
reached
the
the
point.
cap.
This is the point, Mehmet, where you have to decide, if you want to move forward like solo, because that's
Mhm,
mostly what you're doing. But that's
mhm,
like you see as, when you're doing everything, or like there's a limit, to the hours that you can spend a week. I know you
mhm.
delegate some stuff, but
Yeah.
if you lower your rates and hire people and work on
mhm,
the people instead of the, what do you call it, job, then
mhm.
like it's a choice.
No, what I want to do is delegate people, but keep on increasing my rates. And what I see, what I think is that it won't happen in on Upwork. So I'm
Okay,
trying
can i
to
can I
go
interrupt?
outside of Upwork.
Can I
Yeah.
interrupt? Yeah, so you said you want to increase your rates
hmm
and still delegate. So
Yeah,
there's a way to do that. You don't have to increase your rates, your hourly rate. You can
yeah,
decrease your hourly rate, and you can still increase your fixed prices. So that's
yeah.
how I am, getting paid
Mm.
maybe $100 an hour.
In fact, my strategy is kind of similar to yours because what I do, I'll keep my $80 an hour rate on Upwork same, but I get very few hourly projects now. Just like
Okay.
you, I go with fixed rates. I prefer fixed rates,
Okay.
and it's more convenient on my end. And as you said, you can decide what should be the value of the fixed rate project is, or maybe I'll find some clients who will accept retainers.
Retainers, yeah.
That's also very difficult on Upwork, but I know outside of Upwork it's possible.
Mehmet, it's difficult to find people. It's
Yeah.
difficult when you find people. It's difficult to sustain them. It's difficult
Mm.
because, like, yeah, people are hard to
Yeah.
manage. Sometimes you have to, like, it's a challenge. Like, that's something else. This is something
Mm.
a lot different than working on your craft, because this is like a craft within itself. Relate, just relationships, networking, the social skills, whatever that you have while you're trying to run a business. So,
I'll tell you a very short story if you have time.
yep, let's go.
Um, Recently, I'm trying different platforms on finding clients, direct clients, and so on. For I'm doing post production work. Some of the work is coming from ad agencies worldwide, or photographers, professional photographers, and I'm trying to find them through LinkedIn and so on. And one photographer, food and beverage photographer, contacted me, and we exchanged the ideas and so on. He sent me a very professional brief. It's a food bar, okay, and I looked amount of work and so on, and compared to my rates on Upwork, I gave him a rate that I added a bit extra that I would have offered on Upwork. Okay, let's say uh, I would say, okay, this is $300 job. I said the guy, okay, I'll do it 450. Okay, this is good increase.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Hmm.
and the guy was shocked, and because he was shocked, I understood when we were talking that he found it very cheap,
Hmm.
and he said
300 or 50?
it would be a 300 job on Upwork. I said 450, 450.
Okay, and he thought it was cheap.
It was
Yeah.
cheap, but he said that's
Yeah.
it. He made the mistake of saying that's it. I said I understood I made a mistake by just saying okay, this is it should have been much higher. So in real life, it's the professional life. The rates are far more higher than on Upwork, but the
Yeah.
problem is ability to finding the right people to contact and promote your work.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's, look, I never, um there's only one time that I checked how much, like, other companies are charging for it. And uh yeah, like, I don't know, because I don't know if those rates will be sustainable in a country like United States. But the thing is, like, for example, we live in Turkey, and it's no different, man. A hamburger is $10. So, we got to make the dollars too. I don't even look, because when you compete with yourself, that's like the best piece, because you can go as much as you want. And yeah, that's why, like, I'm against the competitor stuff. Yeah.
And what I see is that the platforms, people are going more on freelancing, and the competition is increasing, and they are killing each other. You cannot do anything about it, but the competition on Upwork and maybe on Fiverr and so on, it's fierce, and they are killing each other. You cannot do anything. I don't want to say, oh, they are decreasing rates. They are doing what's right for them. I don't do any, but
Mm,
there the competition is fierce. Someone submits their work, 50 people submit rates, and if you are 30 minutes late, there are already 50 people submitted a code, so you'll be on the third page when the guy is checking the rates. He won't.
Or
If
you
he
have to
finds in
spend
the
some
first or
dollars.
second page, yeah,
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 you have to spend
he'll
some
he'll
dollars
just,
to get on top of the
yeah,
bid
you have
because
to,
there's a
yeah.
bidding system when you're
Yeah,
applying. Yeah.
that's another nonsense thing. But I understand Upwork because there are so many freelancers than clients, so they are making money out of freelancers using this credit
Oh
system.
yeah,
They are
that's
making money.
true. More
Yeah,
freelancers than clients. You sure about that?
uh, I read that it's like 10 times
Mehmet,
more than the
man,
clients.
they quote you, bro. Like you don't want to talk shit about Upwork, no?
Mm.
They quote you. You know, you have some
Yeah, they tell
relationships.
me. Yeah. Oh, anyway, I hope they are not listening this podcast.
Maybe they will, but yeah, that's okay. You didn't say anything
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bad.
Sure. I don't. It is what it is. So
Yeah, man, Upwork
there are
has
so
been
many.
a game
Yeah,
changer. So maybe we should not forget that it's been a platform for so many people to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
get a
I
better
agree
chance
on
of.
that.
Yeah,
Only thing is that I wouldn't want to depend all my time and all my business on one platform. You don't know what will
yeah,
happen.
it just
So
get that's why like,
diversify.
and they support that because they you can take your clients out after 2 years
Yeah,
without
we
any
should also talk on
legal
that because you
consequences.
you do it far
Very,
more often than I
yeah,
do.
yeah. Almost all my clients, I took them out, and
Hmm.
I appreciate Upwork for that. Because it used to be um, they had to pay a shit ton of money, the clients, if they wanted to legally, make a contract with you.
Yeah, yeah. The thing is that for on Upwork side, paying 10% and a lot of credit money as well. It's not only 10%. I don't regret that because otherwise I wouldn't find these clients anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I'm that's okay for me. If I'm making $1,000, I can give $100. But what I'm saying is that okay, I'm getting 1,000, paying 100, but on top of that, I'm just paying this enormous amounts to credits just to quote. For me, that's the nonsense part. At least
But
they
listen,
should say you are making this much money. We'll give you this much of credits so you can quote or do
mm,
something to help.
yeah, man, you're right. I was just saying that, yeah, just do something for the freelancer. Uh, but yeah, still, like it's. I guess they would argue that it's their way of eliminating people who are making that much of money, or like who are like scammers, because the people who are making a lot of money wouldn't care to invest a couple more dollars for us. So that
Mhm.
would be their perspective, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be. And
But
to
that's
my
bad for the
surprise,
starters, for example, then.
exactly. That's very bad
So
for the
that's why
starters.
it just doesn't align. One thing that they're doing doesn't make sense. When you think of it that way, they're not helping the
Yeah,
starters
it's
either.
it's
So,
it's a business problem they have to solve. And
yeah.
on top of that, I don't understand how they make a loss in that because I every year I look at their financials and they are losing money. How you can achieve this?
Oh my God.
Getting
Is there like a
10.
grand scheme,
uh,
whatever this
I
word? Oh my God.
Yeah,
There, someone is just, laundering, just what do you say? Not laundering, but what's the word?
whitewashing human or something like that.
Yeah,
Just
that's
yeah.
just the
But
word,
I don't
man.
understand. Okay, they have employees, they have support, and the support isn't that good. You can see it when you have a dispute or
How
anything
many,
like
for
that.
example, employees they have? Like, say, how many employees? Let's look. They had like in 2021, they had like 650, and their revenue has increased by 100. Yeah, 100%. No, not even 1,000%. So it was 0.164 billion to now 1.4 billion dollars.
They're making money but spending at the same time. It looks like that, and I'm sure they say 600 employees. on top of that, there should be they are using freelancers as well on top of that. So they are, let's say, 1,000 around people get paid through Upwork for to do their work.
Yeah, plus 850 right now.
Mm.
Very diverse too. Asian, Hispanic,
Yeah,
15%
that's normal
Hispanic,
because
Asian,
it's global.
10%. Yeah,
There are
black.
freelancers all around, so it's normal that there's a diversity there, and they would be using freelancers all around because when you are in Australia, you shouldn't wait for the support to wake up in the US.
Yeah, they're doing a good job, but maybe that's false information. Maybe they are not losing money, Mehmet.
In stock exchange, they, yeah, because they have, if you want you can buy Upwork shares, so you have to officially tell your income loss and so on, and because that affects your share
Okay, so it's a
value.
public company.
It's a
That's
public
why.
company, yeah.
Damn, this
Okay.
conversation led us to places, sir. So then, yeah, we should call it a day.
Yeah, we should call it a day, and let's keep on talking about money on next episodes as well, because that's the most critical part, I guess.
It is.
Yeah.
Take care. Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, please don't forget to join our LinkedIn group, Freelancers Coffee Break. If you want to get more information, you can write uh, an email.
Just drop a message on the LinkedIn group or under this episode's show notes.
See you on the next episode.
Bye bye.